cool. Look at that poster. Tell me that poster ain't cool looking. Hello, my name is Dan Skip Allen, and this is the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. On this episode, I am my co-host is Mr. Stephen Billings, and we are going to be talking about I believe it's the only John Wayne movie in this book. This is the book this is our Bible. This is the book that we go off of. It's called The Essentials, the 52 must-see movies, and it's by Robert Osborne and TMC and Jeremy Arnold. And this is the motivation of why we're doing these videos is this book. So we finally got to a John Wayne movie in this series of videos that we're doing, which is really weird that there's only one John Wayne movie on the list, but it's arguably the best John Wayne movie. And John Wayne has a collaboration with a gentleman by the name of John Ford. They worked together 14 times. And, with films such as The Quiet Man, How the West Was Won, other ones. And, with Steven here, even he has watched a few of John Wayne's collaborations with John Ford, right?
Yeah. I haven't seen all of them, but the ones that I have seen, Rio Bravo, Stagecoach is one of the big ones. It's on the Criterion Collection. I own that one. And yeah, this one we're talking about today is to me one of the great ones, one of the great Westerns of all time. I don't think we've said what movie we're talking about yet.
Yeah, well, I sometimes like to give people a little bit of a guessing game. What we're going to talk, we're going to be talking about The Searchers, and The Searchers is a phenomenal movie. We weren't originally going to talk about The Searchers this evening. We're going to be talking about something else, but I suggested talking about The Searchers because I thought it was a great movie for me to, particularly because I love Westerns. I'm not necessarily the biggest John Wayne fan, but I have a lot of respect for John Wayne. I think for America and in the movie industry at the time, I think he was necessary. He was such a necessary person. And John Ford obviously found a collaboration with him, and they were necessary together. And it's probably arguably the greatest collaboration. The De Niro's and Scorsese and some of those type of situations. You might have somebody else that you know of that might have a better collaboration, but 14 films from a director and act, that's a lot of films from one duo, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I mean that's probably the most. I'm sure that's the most anybody's collaborated with one actor with another director.
Yeah. So let's get into this. The Searchers is basically a movie where this gentleman named Ethan Edwards comes home from the Civil War, and he goes to Texas where his family is from, and they haven't seen him for quite a while. And before you know it, they have problems with Indians. Do you want to
Native Americans?
No, Comanche. They're called
Comanches.
They call them Comanche in the movie, but they're Comanche. The kids love the nieces. Everybody loves this guy. He's been gone so long. The people that he thinks are one of the nieces is like all grown up, and they have another kid. And so she was just a baby when he knew her before and whatnot. And then they have a adopted son named Marty. He's half Indian, half white, because he was kind of like left. He was kind of left for dead or whatever. Marty was, and the family kind of adopted Marty. So this movie is obviously, the title gives it away. It's called The Searchers. The Indians basically come and kidnap some of the family members of Ethan. And so Ethan has to get a group of people and himself, obviously, and Marty to go after these guys. So give us some more of the details about the plot and some of the story aspects that I may have missed already.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he comes home and right off the bat, they get a visitor, a rev. He likes to be called Reverend. They come in and apparently some of the other neighbors nearby have gotten some of their cattle taken from them, some stolen cattle, and they want to get Ethan's brother to come out and help look for the cattle and the people that stole it. And Ethan says, "Hey, no, I'll go out instead. You stay home. I'll go out and do it." And so they go out and head out. And when they find the cattle finally, or at least one of the cattle, they realize that it's kind of a bait and switch kind of thing. Like it was really to just pull them away from home, most of the men away from home, so that the Comanches could go in and destroy their houses and kill their wives and their kids and whatnot. And so they rush back, and by the time they get back, everything's destroyed. The wife and the husband are dead, and the two daughters are missing. And this is what leads us on our adventure, basically gets us started, where, the two daughters, which are Debbie and no, Laura's the other one. Debbie, what's the other girl's name?
Hold on. Hold on here. I got it right.
Laura's Martin's. I think it's Martha.
Oh God, it's let me see. Oh man, on mine it doesn't show. It doesn't show. It shows the wrong person playing the different character. That's so weird. On my cast thing that I got over here, I have a thing that shows the cast, and it's showing a different name that's playing the same character. It's not showing another name that plays the other character. But okay, I got a rundown of all the main characters here. All right, we got John Wayne plays Ethan Edwards, Natalie Wood plays Debbie Edwards, Ward Bond plays Reverend.
Natalie Wood plays the older Debbie.
Yeah. Jeffrey Hunter plays Marty, and Vera Miles plays Lori Jurgensen. Henry Brandon plays Chief Chicker. They call him, what's the Indian chief's name?
Scar.
I can't pronounce his name. Kickatriz or something. Also, we have John Quaylen plays Lars Jurgensen. Ken Curtis plays Charlie Curtis. Hank Warden plays Moose Harper. Lana Wood is also one of the Debbie characters. That's a younger Debbie. Henry Carey Jr. plays Brad Jurgensen, and Olive Carey plays Mrs. Jurgensen. Now, the Jurgensens are married in one of the daughters is married to one of the Jurgensens, or is going out with the Jurgensens. So the Jurgensens are another family.
Lucy's the older daughter.
Lucy's the older, and she's married to one of the Jurgensens. And the Jurgensens are a Swiss family. I believe they're Swiss. And they come over to we had a lot at this time in the country's history. We have a lot of people from all over the world coming to America, wanted to get their piece of land, get their world, And so the Jurgensens are basically Norwegians, somewhere in that, like Norwegian, Finland, Sweden, one of those countries. You could tell they're from that part of the world. They are, and so we have this adventure that our guys go on, and they get kind of ambushed by all these Indians. They get stuck in an area where the Indians ambush them, and basically a lot of stuff happens, and Marty and Ethan kind of get out of it, and they end up getting away and going away.
Well, basically what happens is they get in a gunfight, they cross a river, they get kind of away from them, and they get in a big shootout, but enough of their guys have died to where they realize they can't really pursue them anymore with the amount they have. But Ethan and Martin decide they're going to continue to go after them because, you know, they got to get Debbie and Lucy back.
And so they get word basically that these other Indians, they start doing like a trade with these other Indians, and they get some information about where the Indians are. But Stephen, I want to ask you a question. Now, if you are selling a blanket, what do you expect to get? What do you expect to get from selling a blanket? Do you think you're going to get some money?
You know, if I'm selling something, I hope to get something in return, whether it's money or something of equal value. You know, yeah.
But
they gave them. They switched it for hats.
Yeah.
But in this case, he thought he was just selling a hat or something, and instead he married a woman apparently.
He ends up with a wife.
Yeah. Which was a funny bit in the movie, yeah.
That was a hilarious. I had to ask you this question. You think you're going to trade a blanket for a wife? I don't think you saw that one coming.
Apparently, it didn't take much. Apparently, to get a wife.
Well, she was a nice lady. Obviously, sure. Marty wasn't smitten with her because he had his girl back. One of the Jurgensens.
Yeah. He had a girl that he continued to show up and then leave throughout the whole movie, like at least a couple times, and she was like very much smitten with him, and would like come and then would like, I'm going back out again, you know.
Yeah, that was.
Dude, I would stay home with her.
I don't know what the heck he was doing, why he was leaving her, but I would never have left her if I was him. But he definitely loved him.
Laura was her name.
Laura, and the family, I think, wanted them to be together because they were trying to get her hitched, or whatever you want to call it. They were anybody could get her.
She said she'd been waiting around for like 12 years.
Really?
I'm like, damn, I would have been done after a year. Like 12 years? Come on.
Oh yeah.
Little bit too long, I think.
Oh yeah.
Maybe back in them times that wasn't long. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. And then we get a shift in the way they start telling the story. We get kind of a winter feel to the movie where they're in winter and stuff, and Ethan and Marty are killing some buffaloes. But the point of view of the story is from the Debbie Edwards character, because she gets a note. She gets a letter, I guess a letter from Marty telling her all the events that transpire, which is really interesting how you completely change the shift of the movie from one aspect and then have the movie based on this letter that she's reading. And then part of what she reads is the whole marriage to the Indian squaw thing. That was part of the letter. But they end up with going to this outpost with this guy, and supposedly he was going to give him some information, and they were going to go do this. And turns out he was trying to stab him in the back, and Ethan had to shoot him because he was going to basically shoot them in their sleep and stuff like this. So this movie's got so many moving parts. That's the one thing about The Searchers. It's not just your straightforward kind of Western. It's got a lot of different moving parts. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I was going to say, the first time I watched this movie, it confused me a little bit because it's not really like spoon-fed to you exactly the passage of time. But then watching it again, you kind of get it. You get an idea of better, that time has passed. And that's why they do this whole letter thing. The story's told through a lot, the second part of the movie is told through a lot of the encounter through her reading of the letter. And apparently, based off of what I researched, the letter comes about a year after they'd left after visiting. They visited them, and then a year later they get a letter. And then this is the telling of that time during that year. And then by the time they come back again, it's 5 years later.
Yeah, they really mess with time in the movie. I can't believe we were gone that long.
Yeah, it doesn't, you know, I'll be honest, if there was a negative for the movie, I'll say that they don't really convey the passage of time that well, other than kind of like you can see John Wayne's got a little bit more gray in his hair. And other than that, that's about it. Like everything else seems about the same, and you don't really get that idea that years have gone by them searching for her. I think they could have maybe tried to do that a little bit better, but other than that, I mean, the movie's flawless for me.
Yeah, I mean, Marty doesn't even age in the movie. How the heck is it 5 years?
No, he gets a little bit more stubble. I mean, that's about it.
You know, and I mean, and then of course he gets every insult under the sun. You know, Ethan calls him every blanket head and all kinds of different things he calls him. So then we get the Civil War somehow ends up in Texas. I don't know, wherever they are, they end up running into a bunch of cavalry from, it looks like the north, right? Did I see that right? They were all wearing blue.
I'm not sure.
They were all wearing blue. So I think it's the northern part of the Civil War. They come across them, and this bunch of Indians that they were searching for the whole movie, they just come across them. They're all dead. But guess who's not there? The girls.
Yeah.
The girls aren't there. And because, you know, Scar, who gets referred to multiple times in the movie, is going to be the main bad guy in the movie. He's going to be the guy that they have to get the girls from in the end, you know. So give me some more of the details as far as Scar and the girls and some of this stuff, because this is where it kind of gets a little convoluted.
Well, I would say, you know, getting towards near the end of the movie, where we finally kind of we find out that through a friend of the family, or not a friend of the family, but somebody, they run into they come to this bar. There's this Mexican that's there that says he has information about, you know, he's seen who they think is Debbie, and, you know, gives them the information, brings them to our bad guy, which to me is very loose, is kind of, you know, one way of looking at it. I think to give it more credit, the movie more credit, even though because one of the themes of the movie is the racism of that time. And I think that when we finally have our characters all sit down together in these scenes where they finally sit down in a tent together, Scar's talking with the Mexican and Martin and Ethan, and you know, Scar explains that the reason he has killed the people he has like that is because his two sons were killed by white men. And so it really doesn't make him such a clear-cut bad guy. He's obviously somebody that's just, from his point of view, trying to protect his own, and is fighting back against what he think is his enemy. So I think that makes it more complex and more real, because as we know, coming over to America we were not, you know, we have a holiday called Thanksgiving, but I have a hard time celebrating it sometimes, thinking about what we had to do to be a part of this country. So it's not so clear cut. And then in that same scene, we finally see Debbie, and now she's grown up. I think she's about 14 or 15. And she is become one of Scar's wives. So yeah. And they have to restrain themselves because, you know, they don't want to start a fight when they're outnumbered. So they have to leave. And, yeah, I mean, then we get a great scene after that, where they're over the hill. They're kind of discussing what they want to do. And then Debbie runs down the hill to them and tells them basically to leave, and that she's been with them, that the Comanches are now their family. And this, I guess, pisses off Ethan. And she's like, I'd rather her be dead than be, you know, part of, you know, be a part of them, be a part of the Comanches. So he tries to kill her. but Martin won't have it. And so that I thought that was a great scene.
Yeah, you know, Marty and Ethan were kind of going at each other's odds the whole movie, but you know, sometimes, you know, what's in the it's weird how people, once they get kidnapped, they just become part of the people that kidnapped them. They become part of their families. Even today, sometimes that happens. It's in captivity. Once you're part of a civilization or a group of people or a family or whatever, it's amazing how sometimes that can happen. You know, from one point,
there's a name for it, but I can't. But it's like a Stockholm thing. I think that's what it's called. But but where they basically will torture you or starve you, and then slowly they make you need them by eventually feeding them, and it makes them kind of like feel like that they are now, you know, beholden to you. And that's probably part of what that, and the fact that she was so young when they took her. They didn't just kill her. They decided that she was too young and wasn't corrupted enough to where they couldn't turn her, you know, if they needed to. Because the older sibling, she was already probably about 14 or 15, and she was too old. They couldn't, you know, without damaging her. Like we found out with other girls that had been taken, we'd seen other girls had been captured and then taken back, and they were like mentally just gone. You know, they were like just making noises like, you know, like they were gone, you know.
Yeah, they were out there. But so the Native Americans have been the first group of people that did this. They assimilated people into their society. And it's interesting that Indians, Native Americans, this is something that they did. That's one of the fascinating things about the Native American civilization, is how some of the things they did are very like smart.
Well, it's because it's not about race, you know, to them, it's not about racism. It's not about race. It's about respect. You know, any kind of what we would perceive as racism is not because of their beliefs. It's because of how we treat them, and they have to fight back. You know, like it's not racism. It's for them. It's about ownership. You know, it's they were there first, and that now it's being taken by some outside force. So it's like they're an accepting culture, and to them, when they see somebody that has a certain quality to them, or you know, they respect that, and then they, you know, let that, you know, I'm not saying all Native Americans are great either. I'm sure there were some bad ones then, but it's, in this case, I think that I like how the movie portrays, you know, that it's not so black and white, you know, so.
Yeah. Speaking of color, one of the techniques a lot of filmmakers used that was kind of a hot technique, like we have like 3D now or IMAX or whatever now. But back in the day, one of the techniques that they used in film that was kind of a hot thing at the time was VistaVision and Technicolor. And when you, especially like How the West Was Won, and definitely The Searchers, it really stands up today as just a beautiful, beautiful. I mean, these movies that take place in a time period like that, where we're not building stores and gas stations and buildings and houses everywhere, you were able to do some of the really cool things that we get to see in Westerns that you don't get to see. You know, at one point they had to go to Italy because they couldn't find the vast wasteland of land to film Westerns, to make the Westerns look like Westerns. And Sergio Leone Westerns, we all know those, Clint Eastwood. But just talk about how beautiful this film was.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say there's some shots in this film that really just stand out as some of the best shots I've ever seen. Like, not just like these like fantastic, you know, horizon shots of them walking across, you know, deserts and plains, but like One of the probably my favorite shot of the movie is when they first come back after their house has been attacked and they find their family dead. There's a shot where it's like a chicken coop or something like that, and you see John Wayne's kind of like silhouette walking towards the opening of the door, looking in, like and it's just black, and then you see it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful shot. And you don't really, when he walks in and he finds dead bodies, but you don't see his expression, just black. And it's just a beautiful, there's a lot of great shots like that in the movie.
Doesn't he pick up a doll or something like that?
He does eventually find, Debbie's doll, in that same scene. But, yeah, there's a lot of great and the colors, like I have it on Blu-ray. I know Dan's got it on DVD, but I watched it on Blu-ray. And it's one of the movies that the transfer is pretty damn good. I think this transfers from 2006, if I believe correctly. So it's a little old. I'd like another restoration of it, but it looks pretty damn great. This movie came out in 54?
Yep.
So it's one of the movies that another one that kind of comes to mind is The Red Shoes, which is also in this book. We did a video for it. That comes from the 50s that looks fantastic because of shooting in that. I think that one was also shot in the same Technicolor. Technicolor had to, it might have been in the same way. That's why the colors are so popping so well, and
they're vivid. They're just like right out your face.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible when you think about how many. This was a time when most movies were black and white, and then there's like movies like this where it's like, holy shit, why didn't they just make all the movies look like this? Like, because it wasn't easy. It wasn't something everybody could do. It was something new. And nowadays, you're talking about like, it's hard to shoot Westerns like this anymore. Nowadays we can just like digitally remove things in the background that we don't want, and we can still shoot these movies. But this was a time where most of the movie could be shot in America and it still feel like the West because there was not shit being built everywhere. So yeah, and that's part of the beauty of it, is that it didn't have to be manipulated. It feels real. It feels like you're there. It's not sets. It's actual, them out in the snow with buffalo in the plains, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah, it really is. Just closing up, Stephen, where would you put The Searchers if you had to do the best Westerns of all time? Where would you put The Searchers? How does The Searchers fall in John Wayne and John Ford, this collaboration and the quality? Why this film is essential, obviously, why it's in the book. We know why it's in the book. How does this fall for you?
It falls for me pretty high in the sense of Westerns. And I mean, it definitely isn't. It isn't, like a lot of the big Westerns that people talk about and the ones that people say to start with are revenge movies, which in a sense, this is kind of a revenge movie, but not really. It's more of a chase movie. It's but it's wrapped up in a lot of different things, a melding pot of themes and complicated things, which we didn't really talk about how complicated the character of John Wayne is, like in the movie, being somebody that obviously has a background in being not completely a great guy. Like he hints at the fact that he's not a great guy. Like he's done some bad things while he was in the war, but that there might be a warrant out for him, maybe, or something. Who knows? But but he's still got this side to him that this needing to save his family. But even when his family possibly has turned to the other side, he's willing to kill them, stuff like that, which we didn't get to the end of the movie. But at the end of the movie, when they finally get to Debbie, instead of killing her, he actually does take her and says, "Let's go home," and everything is kind of a happy ending at the end. But it's I would say definitely probably in my top 10 Westerns, up there with Unforgiven. I would say Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Another John Ford, Stagecoach is a really good one. I mean, there's a lot of great Westerns, but the ones that speak to me are some of them, and definitely The Searchers is definitely up there for me.
Yeah, definitely The Searchers is in my top 10. You know, mine's is Unforgiven, High Noon, Once Upon a Time in the West, How the West Was Won. And you said earlier before we were on air, 310 to Yuma, the remake, which is
Yeah.
great. It's just such a great genre, and we just don't make these kinds of films today, you know, like they made back in the day. You know, it was like it just came easy to John Ford to make a great Western. You know,
Well, it's funny. I was talking about this before. I think we talked about this with another film on the list, but for westerns for America is like the samurai film for the Japanese. Like it's a story about our history. That actually happened. Part of our culture that was like our big deal. Now I think Japanese culture has held on to that a lot more than we've held on to the Western, because they're still making samurai movies now, and we very seldom see a lot of mainstream Westerns anymore. They're very few and far between now, but that's what's unique about the Western and that's why so many of them came out during that time period, is because that was our part of our history, part of our culture, very much. And it's something I think people sometimes are like, man, they're the same thing. All of them are the same. They're not all the same. Not all Westerns are the same. And they're not just about shooting people and cowboys and Indians. And there's a lot more to it than that. And I think people need to give more Westerns a chance. And, if you need recommendations, just message us. We'll give you some more.
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a whole list of Westerns that are just phenomenal. They have been doing a little bit better job. There's a great Western out in theaters right now called Hostiles. It's getting really good reviews. It's got a great director, Scott Cooper, who did Black Mass and
out of the Furnace. He did Crazy Hearts.
Crazy Heart, yeah. So he's done some really good films. And they've done a couple remakes. We mentioned 310 to Yuma, and we got the Magnificent Seven.
True Grit.
True Grit. So we see some of the remakes. And in some senses, it might be as good, if not a little bit better than
I would say True Grit remake is better than the original, which is John Wayne.
John Wayne. John Wayne got his only Oscar for True Grit, and then he played Rooster Cogburn again in the 70s, which I wouldn't have suggested playing Rooster Cogburn again if I was him, because that was he was kind of on the downside of his career at that point, because he was up there. He was really up there in age. But yeah, so thank you, Stephen, for doing this. Whenever I get a chance to talk about Westerns, it's one of my favorite topics. It's, John Wayne, this is his only film. I think, is this the only John Ford film too on the list? So if it's John Wayne and John Ford together, it's the greatest collaboration in film history. And they had to put something from these guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it was me making this list, I wouldn't want to have too many of the same collaborators or the same filmmakers or actors all throughout the whole. You want a variety, because there's so many different great artists and filmmakers out there that everybody should have a spot somewhere in here, because there's too much good out there.
Yeah, so. Yep, absolutely. And it gives us the opportunity to talk about a various number of actors, actresses, filmmakers, and styles of film too. And that's what's great about the book and the series that we're doing. There's so much that we get to talk about. And Stephen, where can you be found?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, all them places at MovieMan16 or MovieMan for Life. Or I have a bunch of different tags, because I can never get the same username on everything, because people suck.
Stephen does a lot of reactions on Stardust as well. He didn't mention that, but I'm going to say that because he does a good job on that. I just started getting into Stardust.
Yeah, Dan's fine. It's the new year. Dan's starting to do the Stardust thing.
It's my New Year's resolution to put out more Stardust videos than Steven.
To put some out. Yeah, you waited till this year to start doing it. I think you just wanted to begin the year because you're like being very OCD. Like I want to start the year and then go forward.
Yeah. All my friends are doing it, so I just want to jump on the bandwagon. And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And Stardust now. Hey, all right. So for Steven and myself, and I'm sure you're going to see Andrew eventually again. Good night.